Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Always exciting.
And today we've got a figure who just... I don't know how to even introduce this guy.
He's a lot.
Bertrand Russell,
Yep.
mathematician, logician, philosopher, AMD activist.
What can't he do?
It's like...
He's just too smart for just one field.
Yeah, had to be good at everything.
And,
It seems like it.
we have a listener who sent in a PDF all about Bertrand Russell
I've been looking it over.
by Fernando Brancano.
Really interesting stuff.
And one of the things that struck me from what I was reading is
Yeah.
this guy seemed to change his mind a lot.
He did, yeah. And,
For a philosopher.
it's a little tricky.
That could be a good thing or a bad thing.
Right.
Right? Like you could say,
Yeah.
oh, he was constantly evolving. He was constantly learning new things.
Yeah.
Or you could say he was just all over the place.
Or maybe he never really figured anything out.
Right, exactly.
Just kept moving on.
So that's kind of the...
That shiny thing. The mystery that we want to explore today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is he inconsistent, or
Yeah.
is there some kind of deeper logic to
Is there a thread we can follow?
his intellectual evolution?
Totally, yeah.
Let's start with just the basics. Who is this guy?
Yeah.
Like, where did he come from?
He was born in 1872.
Okay.
His grandfather was actually prime minister to Queen Victoria.
Okay.
So,
We're talking pretty high level
privilege here.
of privilege, yeah.
Yeah.
But Brancano actually points out that his upbringing was really lonely.
Really?
Yeah.
I would think.
You think with that kind of family, there would be people around.
Yeah, all these
Social gathering.
very isolated and a lot of guilt instilled in him
Oh,
from a young age.
That's where we get the overthinking from.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
But that background, that very kind of strict, traditional, high society, that doesn't really seem to jive with the guy who ends up becoming kind of a radical,
A bit of a rebel.
challenging social norms. Like,
Yeah, not just a little bit.
how do we
Yeah.
reconcile those two things?
Well, that's one of the things that I think Brancano really highlights.
Right.
Is that tension in his life.
Yeah.
It's like he was a walking contradiction in a lot of ways.
Okay.
Aristocratic background,
Right.
but radical thoughts.
Right.
And not just in like politics and social stuff, but even in his philosophy.
Yeah.
He was accused of inventing entirely new philosophies
Wow.
every few years.
So philosophy whiplash.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
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 But at the same time, Brancano says there is this through line,
Okay.
this consistency,
Yeah.
this drive for truth,
Okay.
tolerance,
Right.
and good old-fashioned rationality.
So how do we square that circle?
I think it starts with math.
Okay.
Russell really loved the precision of math. But he was a little disappointed with Cambridge,
Really?
where he studied.
Why?
He felt like they weren't quite as rigorous as he'd hoped.
Oh, so they weren't nerdy enough for him.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
So
So math wasn't fully satisfying him.
not cutting it.
Yeah.
So he turned to philosophy.
Okay.
And specifically,
Yeah.
he was drawn to idealism.
Okay, so for our listeners who are not philosophers,
Yeah,
can you give us a quick
of course.
Idealism 101?
Idealism 101.
Yeah.
Imagine philosophy back then, like you're trying to solve this giant jigsaw puzzle,
Okay.
but all the pieces are ideas.
Okay.
And idealism was trying to make this one big picture out of all of knowledge,
Okay.
trying to find this unified
Unified theory.
theory of everything.
Okay. I feel like Russell's about to mess up that picture.
He is.
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
He and his friend G.E. Moore,
Okay.
they kind of staged this philosophical rebellion. Imagine the universe as like one giant block of cheese.
Okay.
That's kind of like the monism that the idealists loved.
Okay.
Russell and Moore were like,
Okay.
no, it's more like a pizza.
Okay, pizza universe. I'm with you.
Lots of different toppings.
Yeah.
So that's pluralism.
Okay. But is that really any different than just saying there's a lot of stuff?
Well, it leads to Russell's big idea,
Okay.
logical atomism.
Okay.
So instead of this cheese block,
Yeah.
he's saying break reality down to its
Okay.
smallest bits.
Yeah.
Like atoms,
Okay.
those are your foundation.
Yeah.
Then build knowledge up from there.
So like those building blocks that kids play with,
Exactly.
but for ideas.
For ideas.
Okay, I like it.
And to make sure those blocks fit right,
Yeah.
you need the right tools.
Okay.
And that's where language comes in.
Okay.
Russell was obsessed with language.
Was he like writing poetry on the side?
Not quite.
Okay.
He thought that everyday language was too fuzzy.
Okay.
Like if I say the tallest person in the room, that changes depending on who's here.
Yeah, that's true.
He wanted a language as precise as math.
Okay.
So you can make these very, very clear statements.
Makes sense because like a sloppy sentence is bad philosophy.
Exactly. Like a leaky beaker is bad chemistry.
Yeah.
You're not going to get good results.
Exactly.
And that's what led him to team up with Alfred North Whitehead.
Okay.
For the Principia Mathematica.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
They tried to make math super rigorous.
Okay.
Like reduce it
all
down to basic logic.
That sounds ambitious.
It was a huge undertaking.
Yeah, I bet.
3 volumes.
Yeah.
Thousands of pages.
Okay. But there's a snag, right?
There is a snag.
Russell's paradox.
Russell's paradox.
Doesn't sound good.
Not something you want named after you usually.
Yeah.
But it's one of those ideas that's brilliant because it breaks things.
Okay.
Think of it like this.
Yeah.
A barber who only shaves men who don't shave themselves.
Okay.
Does he shave himself?
Oh, yeah. Now my brain hurts.
If yes, then no.
Yeah.
If no, then yes.
Okay.
It creates this logical loop.
So it's like an infinite regress.
Kind of.
Yeah. But that's the point, right?
That's the point. It exposes a flaw.
Yeah.
In how we were thinking about sets and logic.
Yeah. Okay.
And Russell's solution was the theory of types.
Theory of types. Okay.
Imagine language is like a building with floors.
Okay.
Each floor can only talk about the one below it.
Okay.
So this stops that barber paradox.
Yeah.
Because you can't have a sentence on the same floor referring to itself.
Okay. So he's basically like creating a way to keep language from tripping over itself.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Clever, but also kind of complex.
Can be a little heady.
But it all ties back to this idea of how language represents reality. You know that phrase?
Yeah.
The present king of France is bald.
I feel like there's a trap here.
There might be.
Yeah.
The sentence is grammatically fine.
Okay.
But there is no king of France.
Right.
So Russell argued
that
these descriptions are like incomplete maps.
Okay.
They need the world to give them meaning.
So like if I have a map to buried treasure, it's useless if there's no treasure.
Exactly.
Yeah, even if the map itself looks perfect.
Exactly.
It's leading me to nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where Russell gets really modernist.
Okay, so remind us what modernism is.
So modernism, it's this big movement in art and literature.
Yeah.
Basically, they're trying to break down how we represent the world.
Okay.
Think Picasso, abstract art.
Okay.
And Russell's doing that with logic.
Okay.
He's asking.
So he's like the philosophical Picasso.
Kind of.
Okay. I like that.
He's wrestling with the same questions.
Okay.
What is reality?
Yeah.
How do we know what we know?
Okay.
And can language or art ever truly capture it?
Yeah. Big questions.
Big questions.
Okay. And he doesn't shy away from them.
No, he does not.
In fact, he seems to get bolder.
He gets bolder.
As he goes.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the central question that he poses is there any knowledge in the world so certain that no reasonable person could doubt it?
That's the challenge.
That's a challenge. And that feels super relevant today.
It does.
Right.
With all the
fake moves and all this stuff.
Who do you trust?
Exactly.
What can you believe?
Yeah.
But Russell goes old school for this one.
Okay.
Back to British empiricism.
British empiricism. So remind me what that is.
Think Locke, Hume.
Yeah.
Those guys. They were all about knowledge coming from what we experience. Seeing, hearing, touching.
Okay. So not abstract ideas.
No.
But the stuff that we...
Yeah, the stuff you can...
literally sense.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the basic.
That feels more grounded.
Yeah. More solid.
Yeah. But didn't Russell have this whole thing about sense data being subjective?
He did.
So how can we build a shared world if my red isn't your red?
That's the puzzle.
Yeah.
That Russell spends a lot of time on.
Okay.
Like, I can't know your exact experience of a strawberry.
Yeah.
But we can both agree that we're having an experience.
Okay.
And from there,
we
use logic to kind of connect those individual experiences.
So it's like we're taking all of these subjective viewpoints.
Right.
And kind of building a more objective picture out of all of them.
Exactly. Yeah, you're getting it.
I like that.
It's like instead of this one God's eye view, you get a more objective picture by combining everyone's subjective ones.
That's kind of nice.
It is kind of nice.
It's like everyone's viewpoint matters.
Yeah, and that actually leads right into how he starts thinking about ethics.
Okay.
Which,
oh
yeah, it gets really interesting.
Okay.
But I think we need to save that for part 2.
Ugh, the cliffhanger.
I know.
But you better be ready.
Oh, I am.
To unpack all of his ethical complexities next time.
We're going to get into it all.
Okay, because I have a feeling this is where things get really controversial.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so stay tuned, listeners. We'll be back with part 2.
Can't wait.
Okay, so back again with more Bertrand Russell.
More Russell, more problems. Or more solutions, maybe.
Maybe more solutions.
It depends.
Yeah, we left off.
It depends how you look at it.
With this idea of how do we build knowledge from our individual experiences?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling that when it comes to ethics, Russell doesn't keep things simple.
No, he does not.
Right.
He was not known for his simplicity.
Especially
in ethics.
When you consider his personal life was pretty unconventional.
Yeah, a lot of people.
And he was a passionate activist.
Raised eyebrows at his lifestyle.
Yeah.
For sure.
So it's not like he was just sitting in an ivory tower.
No, he was living it.
Coming up with ethical theories.
He was out there.
He was actually out there.
Getting his hands dirty.
Living them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And early on, he was really into this idea that good basically boils down to getting what you want.
Okay, so
desire satisfaction.
Pure hedonism.
He called it.
Yeah.
Kind of, but not exactly.
Okay.
He was reading Spinoza.
Okay.
Who had this whole thing about striving
to
fulfill their own desires.
So it's like follow your bliss.
Kind of.
But with a philosophical...
Yeah, with a philosophical twist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that sounds kind of simplistic, right?
It's a little simplistic.
Yeah.
And I think Russell realized that pretty quickly.
Okay.
That not all desires are created equal.
Yeah, what about the desires that are generally considered bad?
Right, exactly.
You can't just...
Surely he wasn't condoning
No, he wasn't saying go out and do whatever you want.
Okay.
He realized that chasing some desires can lead to a whole lot of mess.
Let's put it mildly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so how did he... So he had to refine his thinking a little bit.
Refine that?
Yeah.
Did he just throw out the whole desire thing?
Not entirely.
Okay. So there's still...
He still thought desires were important.
Okay.
But he moved towards a more nuanced view.
Okay.
He famously said, the good life is one inspired by love and guided by knowledge.
Okay.
So there you go.
Love and knowledge.
That's the key.
I mean, who can argue with that?
It sounds pretty good.
Yeah. It sounds like a good.
And it reflects his belief that morality has to be grounded in human experience.
Okay.
Our emotions.
Yeah.
Our relationships.
Okay.
But can't just be about feeling good.
Right.
We need to use our heads too.
So listen to your heart, but bring your brain to the party.
Bring your brain along for the ride.
Yeah. And that idea that morality is complex.
Yes.
It's not just black and white.
No.
It involves feeling and thinking.
Right.
I feel like that carries over into how he views society and politics as well.
Absolutely.
Because he spends his whole life advocating for freedom of thought, individual happiness, and standing up against tyranny.
All the good stuff.
Yeah. So this wasn't just an intellectual exercise for him.
He was trying to put these principles into practice.
In the real world.
In the real world, yeah.
Yeah.
He was a prolific writer and speaker on social and political issues.
Okay.
And he wasn't afraid to take unpopular stances.
He definitely was not.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, he was against war.
Yeah.
He championed sexual liberation.
Big time.
He pushed for educational reform.
All the things that get people riled up.
Yeah, it's not a recipe for a quiet life.
Not at all.
And, you know, we know it got him in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like imprisonment, get kicked out of Cambridge.
Twice.
It seems like he was constantly...
He was true iconoclast. Always questioning authority. Yeah. Challenging the status quo.
So it wasn't just about these big political movements for him.
He genuinely cared about how everyday people were living.
Okay.
And how social structures could either help or hinder their happiness. So that brings us to his book, Marriage and Morals.
Oh, yeah.
Which caused...
a big one.
Quite the uproar.
A big one.
I mean, those Catholic mothers protesting his appointment at CUNY?
Oh, yeah.
That's some serious...
They were not happy.
No controversy.
Not happy at all.
Yeah. So for those who haven't read the book, can you give us...
So basically, In that book,
yeah,
he challenged pretty much every
okay.
traditional notion of marriage,
Okay.
sexuality,
Okay.
and the role of women in society.
So the trifecta.
Pretty much.
Okay.
He argued for more freedom, more equality between men and women. So a little ahead of his time.
Society was not quite ready for that.
Yeah.
Especially not in the 1920s.
Yeah. And I think there's that great quote from the lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
Who was trying to
block his appointment. He called Russell.
Lascivious, libidinous, lustful.
All of the L words.
All the L words, yeah. Venereal erotomaniac.
Oh, my God.
Aphrodisiac.
Okay, that's amazing.
I mean, the guy went all out.
Yeah. So that kind of captures.
Yeah, it really captures.
Fear.
Yeah, the fear and outrage.
Yeah, and the outrage that his views triggered
in people.
Yeah, but looking back, it's clear he was
ahead of his time.
Ahead of his time.
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah, his ideas about sexual liberation and gender equality paved the way.
So he's like the philosophical prophet of the sexual revolution.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But his activism went beyond that.
It did.
Right.
Yeah.
He was also really involved.
He was really passionate about education.
In education.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remind us about.
Remember the Beacon Hill School experiment?
Beacon Hill.
Yeah. He and his wife, Dora,
founded this school that was really trying to turn traditional education on its head.
So no more rote memorization?
Nope.
No more.
No more harsh discipline.
Harsh discipline.
Yeah, they thought that kids learn best when they're genuinely interested.
Okay.
And they have the freedom to explore.
So it's about fostering curiosity.
Fostering curiosity.
Yeah.
So they focused on hands-on learning.
Okay.
Letting kids follow their own interests.
So that sounds a lot like the ideas of Maria Montessori.
Very much so.
And John Dewey.
Yeah.
Who were big proponents
of progressive education.
Yeah. So Russell was very much.
Yeah, he was inspired by
those
thinkers. Yeah. For him, education wasn't just about cramming knowledge into kids' heads.
Right.
It was about creating well-rounded, ethical people who could think for themselves and contribute to a better world.
And that vision still feels very relevant.
It does, especially in a world that's changing so fast.
Especially.
We need people who could think critically, adapt, and be lifelong learners.
Yeah, we need people who are comfortable with uncertainty.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Russell was really onto something with his educational theories.
Okay, so we've talked about his political views, his distrust of authority, his passion for education.
Yeah.
But what about his religious views?
Oh, yeah.
That was another area where...
That's a big one.
He didn't shy away from controversy.
No, he did not.
So what was Russell's take on religion?
Russell was a lifelong atheist.
Okay.
He was very critical of organized religion.
All right, so not just
atheism, but
anti-theism.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
He saw it as a source of superstition, dogma, and oppression.
So for him, it wasn't about...
Just rejecting God.
It was about rejecting the authority of religious institutions.
Okay.
And the way they often use their power to control people's lives.
So it was more about...
It was more about the power dynamics.
Yeah. Okay.
So he wasn't necessarily opposed to like the idea of spirituality
or personal faith.
Personal faith, fine.
Yeah, but the dogma.
The dogma, the
institutions.
The institutions.
That's what he had a problem with.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to point out that he wasn't trying to...
He wasn't an evangelist for atheism.
Convert people to atheism.
He wasn't trying to...
He was more interested in encouraging people
to think critically.
About their beliefs.
Yeah. And to question authority.
Absolutely.
Whether it be religious or political.
Any kind of authority, you got to question it.
Oh, okay. So he was all about... free thought.
Yeah. Intellectual independence.
That was key for him.
Yeah.
He believed that a truly free society needs citizens who are capable of thinking for themselves. And challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
So
that's a good lesson for all of us.
It is a good lesson.
Yeah. Back again, round 3 with Bertrand Russell. I feel like by now we've covered it all. His philosophy, his logic, even how love and marriage fit into his worldview.
Well, we did warn folks to buckle up for this one, right?
Oh, yeah. This is where we get to the stuff that really made people mad. Russell's views on politics and religion.
Can't talk about the guy without it. Yeah. He was practically famous for being controversial. And from everything we've seen so far, authority is not his thing. Whether it's math, language, even personal ethics, he's challenging the accepted way of doing things.
And when you get to politics, that distrust of authority is like the core of it all. For Russell, it was all about individual liberty. Like, that's non-negotiable.
So not a fan of big government, I'm guessing.
Not really, no. He was suspicious of any concentrated power, government, church, even big corporations. Didn't matter. He thought power just naturally corrupts things.
Makes sense. So to protect individual freedom, you got to keep those in power limited.
Exactly. Keep them on a short leash. That was his motto.
Sounds familiar, like a lot of those classic liberal thinkers, right? John Locke, John Stuart Mill, that crowd.
Oh, he was definitely in that tradition, big time. Free speech, individual rights, all that. But he also went a bit further on things like economic justice.
Oh, interesting. So not just hands-off government, but also wanting a fair distribution of wealth.
Right. He wanted systems that actually worked for people. But he wasn't stuck on one ideology. It wasn't about being strictly capitalist or socialist. It was about solving the actual problems.
Pragmatism over dogma. That's our Bertrand.
Pretty much, yeah. And that's what led him to some of his most controversial stances, like being so against war.
Yeah. The guy went to prison for his pacifism during World War I. That's commitment.
He wasn't messing around. And that experience, seeing how governments can use fear and propaganda, it just deepened his commitment to fighting against tyranny. Any tyranny.
Speaking of which, that trip he took to Russia right after the revolution, I bet that shook things up for him.
Yeah, that was a big one. At first, he was kind of hopeful, like a lot of intellectuals. They thought, okay, the Bolsheviks, they're going to create this new society.
Workers' paradise, all that.
Exactly. But once he was actually there, saw how the Bolsheviks operated. Total disillusionment.
So much for utopia.
It wasn't pretty. Just another flavor of tyranny. That's how he saw it. He ended up being just as critical of Soviet communism as he was of, the systems that came before.
So not capitalism, not communism. What was he advocating for?
He was always a bit wary of those big fix-everything schemes. Thought real change happens bit by bit. And for him, education, that was the key.
Right. That whole Beacon Hill school experiment he did with his wife, that was radical stuff.
Oh, yeah. They wanted to completely change how kids learn. Nurture critical thinking, creativity, emotional intelligence. Basically all the stuff traditional schools squash out of you.
Sounds awesome, honestly. So no more just memorizing facts, no harsh punishments.
Nope. They thought kids are naturally curious. You just got to let them explore their interests. So lots of hands-on stuff, figuring things out for yourself, taking care of your emotional well-being.
Like, that's the kind of school system we should have, even today. We need kids who can handle a world that's constantly changing, not just robots who can spit back information.
Russell was on the right track, that's for sure. He truly believed education could make a fairer, more free, more kind society.
And I think that ties back to his atheism, too, right? Because that was another big area where he was going against the grain.
Oh, yeah, lifelong atheist. But it wasn't just about saying God doesn't exist. Yeah. It was about rejecting the power of religious institutions, the way they control people's lives.
So personal faith was okay, but organized religion, that was the problem.
That was the problem, yeah. Especially when religion was used to justify war or discrimination, stuff like that. For Russell, real morality, it's got to come from reason, from compassion, from wanting everyone to flourish, not blind obedience to some doctrine.
And again, it's that questioning, that not taking things at face value, which is what he wanted everyone to do. Doesn't matter your beliefs, you got to think them through yourself.
Exactly. That's what makes a free society. People who can think for themselves, and when necessary, challenge the way things are done.
Man, Bertrand Russell, what a mind. We've covered so much, it's almost hard to sum him up.
He was a bundle of contradictions, that's for sure.
Right.
Brilliant, no doubt about it. And the thing is, so many of his ideas, they matter even more today than they did back then.
Absolutely. This wasn't just a history lesson, folks. This is about how to be in the world, how to think in a world that's more complex than ever.
So for our listener who sent in this awesome PDF, I think the takeaway is don't be afraid to question, to be critical, and remember, knowledge is power, but use it wisely.
And hey, maybe take a break from all the doom scrolling and actually read a good book. Maybe even start a school that embraces those Russellian values.
Now that would be a legacy.
All right, that's a wrap on our deep dive into the world of Bertrand Russell. Thank you all for joining us.
And huge thanks to our listener for the great source material. We love these deep dives. Keep those brains working, and we'll catch you next time.